Hey everybody, Larry Bailey here. It's another time for another community meeting. It's 4 o'clock on Tuesdays. Thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate you always showing up live. It certainly makes these conversations less lonely. So thanks for coming. For those that are watching on replay, we meet every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern to talk about topics. Today's topic is the value and methods of a workflow review. For those that don't know, I actually have been performing workflow reviews for other companies really since 2011. That's when I joined Ellie Mae at the time as an implementation project manager. I was the guy that you got after you signed your sales paperwork with Ellie Mae. I'm curious, is anyone on this call that I implemented personally? That would be interesting. I think I know some folks actually still have my implementation from a long time ago. Jolene, I know. I'm thinking of though from the Ellie Mae years. I didn't help you at Ellie Mae, did I, Jolene? That would be really cool. Let me know about that. And just like Jolene's doing, if you have any questions on chat, feel free to use that. If you have if you ever want to come up on stage, virtual stage here, you can come up with audio and or video. This is a community call, so it really is about community questions. I would love to hear some answers to the following questions. Pop quiz time, because you know I love my pop quizzes. Who has ever in your company ever performed a complete workflow review, meaning you actually went through and either yourself or someone within your team went department by department, team member by team member, and asked them and documented what they did, what tools they used, how they used Encompass, naturally, and wrote it all down so in one cohesive workbook. Luba says you did. Luba, how long ago was this? I'm just curious how long ago you did it. You're still working on it. Okay. For me, typically, when I do these with mortgage workflow partners, it's kind of the whole basis of the company. I wanted to go through and create a company that focused in on workflow because that's my specialty. That's what's interesting to me about the mortgage industry is no matter how much technology we have, workflow always comes first, always. And so part of that methodology is to go through and do a workflow review. So today's conversation is going to go through some topics of why these things are important, the things that I do with clients that I help. And hopefully you can find some of these tools and strategies to focus in on. Maybe the entire company is not really something you can do because you've got time constraints or resource constraints. But even if you pick, and I'm not exaggerating here, even if you pick one department a quarter, I mean, maybe even one department a year, but one department, do this for and see the results, and then see if you can get some extra support from your company. So Angie says, do you recommend doing a workflow review prior to moving to the web? 1,000,000 trillion bazillion %, Angie. Anytime that you're transitioning technology, anytime, you should be aware of who is doing what and how they do it. Imagine you were going to write a brand new business rule and you did not use any type of resource to see if you have an existing business rule addressing that field, right? It sounds kind of crazy. And you could do it, but who knows what could happen. So the idea is, should you do a workflow review prior to the web? Again, the answer is yes. How much of that should you do depends on what you're starting to use from web. Remember, Encompass Web is just a set of tools, right? If you're going to leverage Encompass Web as a user interface, that's maybe a different story, and you're going to want to make sure that you understand how your team is going to use that. And the only way you can really understand how they're going to use it is to understand what they're doing today. Angie, so hopefully that helps. Definitely pay attention to what we're going to go through here today. I really believe what I'm going to share with you is going to help you in that fashion and everybody else who's interested in the same topic. Coincidentally, over the last week and a half, really, I've talked to, without exaggerating, at least 6 large companies who are trying to figure out what they have to do to be better prepared for leveraging web settings and web UI. One is a publicly traded company, and they've actually been using Encompass Web for some time, but they're having some strategic issues on getting over some hurdles. So we're working together on that. Candace asks, in 2016, did a workflow review, but only workflow as Encompass usage because we were merging with companies. This is another spot. I've worked with organizations that are merging, or they recently merged and then they bring me in to try to sort things out. And one of the policies that I go through is who does what, right? Or who is going to be doing what if you're merging. And naturally, we all might think as administrators of settings, right? It's really easy because obviously settings control everything. But for me, it's really about who is doing what in the workflow, especially some companies have loan officers doing disclosures, others have disclosure desks. Like, how do you marry that up? Same thing goes with pre-funding QCs. Some companies don't have that. How do you marry that up? So getting into this topic, sorry if you can hear the dogs in the back. They are excited about workflow. I can't help it. What are you going to say? If you can't hear them, love the mic. And last week's recording, sorry, it failed out. What I did was I popped the cord, and that is what happened. So sorry about that. So when we talk about workflow reviews, first thing you got to talk about is documentation. And I'm going to throw up on screen right now an example of a very simple documentation that anybody can use. I actually have this out on one of our websites, and it really just talks about, the output. And so part of your workflow review isn't just documenting what it is. Naturally, that's a function of your interviews, which I'm going to go into the interview part next. But this is all about the outcomes. And what I want you to understand is that when you go through a workflow review, the value of that is the result of the recommendations as well as the result of the outcome of what they do. And so Basecamp, where did you, Basecamp? I'm going to show you Basecamp next, relax. Inside joke for those that don't know, back in 2014, I actually created the first Basecamp, and there's a whole big story I don't want to get into right now that Kevin and Brian are bringing up right now. Thanks, guys. So I'm glad you're reading at least. That's helpful. So the takeaway here is we're up to Basecamp 3 now. Yeah, well, whatever. The idea here is break your workflow up into teams. Now, if you're doing one big workflow review, you might not have different teams. You might have different steps. So when you go through and you're doing a workflow review, don't think about it like what I'm seeing here, like the whole position thing. Like each one of these folks I meet with is usually an hour long. It's usually a screen share. And these are the methodologies, right? And so what I'm asking them is to go through, when's the first time you touch a file? When's the last time you touch a file? What artifacts or what things around you, electronic as well as physical, do you interact with? And you might have a problem, quite honestly, especially if you know the person, you might have a problem conducting this interview, which is why a lot of times I'll get called in because I'm just some dude, right? They don't know me. I don't know them. So it's real easy to have a professional conversation without any personality conflicts. So having said that, if you find that you can't have a truly disinterested conversation with the person you're interviewing, to use Luba's point here, like Luba's in the middle of a workflow review. So like if I'm sitting here working and Luba's like, okay, tell me what you do. I'm like, Luba, you know what I do. And Luba, we do this thing, and it becomes very, we lose a lot of value in that. And so Kim goes on to say in the chat, it's also really hard people have been in the same position for a very long time. And so I want to speak to this part. So, how you have it set up, this is just a Word doc. Now, this is the result of what I use, which is Basecamp. What I use, because I've been using it for over 10 years. What I use to document the conversation. I'm going to show you an example of one in a few minutes. So what I do with this part is create accountability. And so in here, this particular example came from a real interview from a real client. And this was an excerpt. There were legitimately about 250 change recommendations between workflow and between Encompass. half of those were actually Encompass. So about 150 whatever operational changes. 2 years later, we're still working on some of these. And it might sound like that's a never-ending list, but truthfully, the reason why it's 2 years later is because there's a lot of things that are on there that are just, yeah, they should be fixed, but it's not high pressure. It's not real value. So, as an example on here, consider a VoIP fully connected telephony, right? And so they're not doing that because they're using a different path, and that's totally fine. But the idea is it's a conversation of, hey, how come we're not doing this? So when we look at accountability, I'll use workflow reviews to really help the folks who were involved in that team understand, like, hey, we spotted something, we made a decision on that, and that's accountability. And so you don't always, as admins and the other folks that are on this call right now and watching this replay, you don't always get to have your way, right? It's called business. It's a lot of compromise, but you do have to hold people accountable. And so if you are making these choices, either yes, move forward, we're going to wait, or no, we're not doing that, make sure you document that. The next part is the opportunity for automation. So when we, when we talk about, we'll pick this next one, right? This next set in the disclosure team. So there's automation in here. Consider moving to non-classic 4506C. Now, when I wrote this was before Encompass was given the request for transcript templates, right? So now we know we have templates to use. So this becomes really nonsense. Now, they didn't have, at this time, they didn't have business rules to really fill in the fields that I'm sure a lot of you have, but to fill in the 4506 fields through business rules. Now, of course, none of that should be done. You should be using templates. If you're not using templates, you're missing a good opportunity for enhanced workflow. Something else that's happening here for automation is the settlement service provider list. And this is dependent upon if you're using third parties for fees. Now they are. So really the SSPL is irrelevant. So not only did we get away from having to use SSPL templates in this case, but we also got away from having to use SSPL either field triggers or DDM rules, because now everything's done through third-party fee integrations. So it's super nice. So automation is all over the place right now. By the way, if you're not coming to Thursday's 1 o'clock meeting PM with me and Matt Van Fossen from the Big POS, make sure you definitely catch the replay. As soon as I get the download, I'll post the replay here in the community. But we're going to talk about the email that I sent out last week about SDK deprecation in October of 25. I actually coincidentally found Chris Lawrence. You guys, you're going to love this. So I was looking for something today, and I went back and I found Q4 2019 slide deck from, at the time, it would have been Jonathan Core and his team at that time. This is actually before they bought Capsilon, which became AIQ, which is now DDA. Anyway, the point is, on that slide deck, John, go to the community. It's posted in there. You can follow the link. It's a Teams webinar you can sign up for and register for. So my point for bringing this up is I looked at the slide deck, and it's clear as day. It's got SDK in one slide. You go to the next slide, there's no SDK. It's just API. Now, does it say we're deprecating SDK in the future? No. But we've known about this as partners. We literally just talked about this last month as a partner advisory board. Everybody who counted was there. Everybody who was important and knew about this change. The surprise was the email that really honestly wasn't supposed to go to clients last Wednesday. And on top of that, the messaging was actually crafted to be different and more complete to clients, but obviously the cat's out of the bag. So we got to do some revisiting on that topic. The bottom line is there's an extraordinarily small percentage of companies that are going to need to continue to use SDK after October next year. Extraordinarily small. Those are the folks that have IT teams. That's number one. Number two, the good news is Kenzie May, Lender Toolkit, Matchbox, Awesome Technologies, Inc., you name it. They've all been working on API-based plugins to make sure your workflow is supported. what I've always been a fan against, right? And so a negative fan, so to speak, is UI hacks. So if you haven't been on Encompass Web, you might not know this, but if you have been on Encompass Web, you do. There's a loan banner at the top that's completely customizable. In 24.3, ICE is coming out with adding more and more features from web into desktop. How is the loan banner from web going to get in desktop? Is it going to get there? I don't know. But what I do know is that as workflow changes, as your business changes, you must document it so that you understand how people are using, what they're using. Things like loan banner or loan info, or like Ignite has that crazy bar at the top that has all kinds of stuff on there. That was created because somebody decided that they didn't want to go other places to find critical information on a loan file, so they just wanted to glance up at the top. And there's moments during the workflow that they glance at the top to see things that weren't there. And there's value in that, but that was created because the workflow demanded it. Instead of creating a workflow where the user didn't need to worry about that info, they actually could see what they needed to see in their workflow, would have been a much more scalable solution. Now, where am I leading with this? Where I'm leading with this is everybody's got a lot of technical debt or technology debt, things that you no longer need. How do you discover what you have that you no longer need? Well, you have to know what everybody's doing. It's like, anybody ever clean out their house recently? Garage maybe, or a shed, maybe a car or a boat, and you're like, you're looking around like, why do I have this thing? It's probably maybe old, dusty, rusty, who knows? Katie's like, I just throw it away. Well, that's great, except if you find a piece of technology that you don't use, you just can't throw it away. You need to know how it's being used. You need to know if you're paying for it. This came up recently. Does everybody know how to, by the way, does everybody know how to figure out if you've got SDK software running in your Encompass? It's a very easy way to do it. I'll come over here and share this on screen. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to share something inappropriate. So if you go down to your home screen, Kevin nailed it, go down to your home screen, lower right, click on SDK. So this W3WP, by the way, does anybody in the community know what the heck that is? Is that Simple Nexus Encino? I still have yet to get a confirmation on that. I think it's Encino because a lot of people have it, but nobody knows what that is. Yeah, you think it's something about URLs? I don't know. But it's being accessed 12,705 times. Oh, you think it's OB Compass Analytics, Sarah? Thank you very much. I didn't even think about OB. But look, you've got LBAware on here. You got some kind of transmitter thing, some kind of data warehouse thing. So, the idea here is that on Thursday's event, we're going to talk a lot about what you have as SDK, because again, October 25 isn't too far away, but it's far enough. And we're going to want to self-document what you have and why you have it. And this gets into unwinding unnecessary technologies. Guys, if you can't identify in your own environment what that SDK or what that plugin is actually doing, that's why you click on SDK, because plugins don't show up here, which is weird, but SDKs do. So what that SDK is doing, who owns it, when you got it, what is it doing, how much does it cost? Like, think about this. What if there's something on here that's sending data to someplace it's not supposed to be going? Luba had a situation when we were going over, I was I don't know, last month or the month before, I was going over the settings analyzer inside of Encompass, and we looked up something. She found an account that was hitting against their environment every day, 3 times, Luba? And so, that's the idea that you want to find out what's going on there 3 or 4 times a day. So that's the idea of what you want to do. Make sure you document this. Awesome Technologies Inc. is actually creating a work guide, a workbook to assist you as something to take away, something you can download and take away to help you organize, because organization is everything. And There you go. So definitely on the chat, there's a bunch of things going on. I read, Sam, you read an ICE has an internal ticket to correct the plugin tab. Yeah, I don't know. Work on SDK. You guys know you can go to the plugins inside Input Form Builder under Manage Customizations, I hope. You can see all your plugins there. That's where you can also download them and delete them if you need to. All right. Coming on here to this conversation. More things that I want to talk about in here. Let's go back over to Basecamp. I told you I share this with you. So Basecamp is what I use as Mortgage Workflow Partners, as well as Awesome Technologies, Inc., to really document what's got to be done. If you're not using this to document, I don't have a preference. I just want to make sure you're using something to document your workflow. So in this particular case, what I did was I just crafted to-do lists for what has to be done for each setting. This is one way to do a settings review. And I'll show you what a workflow review looks like, just in case you've ever wondered about that. Let me go bring that up. And the reason why I want to share this with you is because it's really important to make sure that when you go through and you're doing a review, like I shared with you here on screen, we're going through and not just interviewing, but you're doing a takeaway. And so when I go through and I do a meeting, it's literally making notes just like this. You're going through and you're dropping down and you're dropping notes, and then when you do a recording, it's in here to be reviewed later. This was in 2022, October 22. And the reason why this is important is because in case you didn't know this, teams will delete your stuff for you based upon your corporate policy. Or, lastly, like you want to make sure everything's connected. So Angie asked, can we still get access to Basecamp? I mean, Basecamp is, I don't know what you're asking, Angie. Sorry. My Basecamp, you can have access to it if you're a client. So I don't know if you want to be a client, Angie, I'll be glad to give you access to the Basecamp. This is mine. I'm just showing you how to get here. If you want to sign up for your own Basecamp account, just go to basecamp.com. I think it's 37 Signals. Go to 37signals.com and then sign up. It's really cheap. By the way, it costs $11 a month. Like you can set up yourself as a user, as an admin. The whole thing is $11 a month. There's ways to add your team members and not let them be like full admins, and you can run your whole company for $11 a month. It's super affordable. All right. I want to get back to something that's really important to me. And this is really when we talk about workflow reviews, it also assists with scaling. So I'm going to just stop screen sharing for a second. When you do a workflow review, one of the things you're also spotting in your company is opportunities for scaling. Right now, somebody just did a price for me. I was helping a wholesale client, and they priced it out at like 7% interest rate for a loan. And the broker, it was for wholesale. The broker was getting back $7,000. That tells me that right now you can probably grab somewhere in the mid fives for mortgage money, which means that eventually, I don't know if people are waiting for the election to be over, see what kind of chaos there's going to be, but eventually we're going to see more volume. Right now, I know that we're getting calls both at ATI and Mortgage Workflow Partners to help clients understand how to not get into the same cycle that we dealt with for the previous 7 years, which is hire fire, right? Companies hopefully have learned some lessons to not get into that hire fire part, but really understand how to leverage technology. I'm telling you right now, if you're not doing a workflow review before you really come to a conclusion of how to scale, you're missing the boat. And it doesn't, as I've been saying all along in this conversation today, it does not have to be the entire company. Just do a workflow review for your processors. If you want to really find where the money is, do a workflow review for your processing team and your underwriting team and end it there. What you're going to find is, how are they leveraging your document collection and disclosure workflows? You're going to find how your processing and underwriting teams are collaborating on getting that file cleared to close. You're going to find out how much your underwriters' time, how much time they're wasting because they're not using automated conditions. These are things I find out every day when we go through workflow reviews. So when you're faced with an opportunity as an admin to figure out for the company, if they give you this responsibility, how to help the company scale more, you've got to get a workflow review done. Do it yourself. If you need any questions, if you have any questions, just ask them on the community. If you need a private conversation, just reach out to me directly. I'm always available. So the takeaway here is do that for scaling. And then also this gives your company the ability to figure out if something can be outsourced. There's two kinds of outsourcing. One is human, one is technology. So outsourcing you might not consider to be automation, but it really is. You're creating digital workers. It's the right way to say it. So whether you hire human workers or you hire digital workers, that's a form of deciding how you want to outsource and grow your company. Got to get your workflow done first. And this kind of lands squarely with, for those that have been following me for a while, hopefully you know that my motto is always workflow before technology. And right now, as we come into the end of 24, what we're going to see with 24.3 when it comes out, we're going to see more changes from ICE, more web settings into desktop. We're going to see desktop improve incrementally, but I really do see the opportunity for workflow improvements by leveraging the things that I've been talking about for well over a year. So if you're not using these, please figure out how you can get these into your workflow. First of all, new doc viewer. Got to have new doc viewer if you ever want to do anything with Encompass Web. So that's step number one. Step number two is you've got to look at enhanced conditions. And the reason why you look at enhanced conditions is because A, you can't use Encompass Web for anything if you're not using enhanced conditions. Brian added too, if you want to use automated retrieval for disclosures and uploads, you've got to use new doc viewer because that's server side, right? But enhanced conditions, you can just move your standard conditions to enhanced conditions and be done. Like you can do that, and then you can decide to clean it up if that's been your holdup. I know when I've worked on that project for companies, they get held up on trying to redo all their conditions while they're moving to enhanced, and it's just a drag. So move it to enhanced first and then worry about fixing them. And then as you're going through that, the next big thing that you want to see if you can leverage is start to use web settings for things like notifications and schedulers more effectively. Naturally, the other one that's in there is task management, right? And workflow tasks. That's still a little bit out there for a lot of companies. The thing that companies are really focusing on is new doc viewer, enhanced condition, and getting the current use of scheduler and scheduled notification going out. One more thing I'll throw at you when it comes to web settings, of course, is Encompass Partner Connect. And I'll kind of sum it up here. If you go into your services password management in your desktop settings and you see a bunch of services that are still there as of now, you should have a plan to unwind those and get those over to Encompass Partner Connect. Now, part of the problem and challenge is not every Encompass vendor is ready for Encompass Partner Connect. We're actually working with a few at Awesome Technologies Inc. to move them from SPM to EPC because it involves some changes. For those companies that you're working with who are already vendors on EPC, please double check their data and document mapping status. Because again, this is workflow. If you've got your teams doing a lot of stare and compare or screenshots or doing other stuff, they're wasting time if you're getting the data and documents directly from the vendors. So these are things that I want to kind of throw at you. If you're going through a workflow and you have any questions at all about best practices or what you find and what you would do or what you think if you want to hear what I would do if I was given that situation, throw it in the community, ask a question, put it up there for, some consensus votes. And we'll see where it goes. So just some comments on here. I'm reading here at the end. I'm sorry if I missed any here, but at the end, at the moment, Candace says there's two things that they wish notifications would do. Let us have more than one from email and add login desktop. Yeah, so the login desktop is a known thing. Candace, I'm not quite sure about the from though. I mean, typically when you send an email, it's only from one. I'm assuming you mean more than you can select like Notification A comes from sender A and notification B comes from sender B. I'm presuming that's what you mean. And yes, that is something that is being discussed and figured out. And does AUS require EPC? I think the right way to say it, Angela, is you can run AUS through EPC, which includes dual run AUS with Encompass Web. This came up earlier too. If you're doing soft pulls and you wanted to do soft pulls through the web, that's currently scheduled for release in December, but you can use soft pulls on desktop today for AUS findings, in case you didn't know, just on the AUS topic. So I don't know if that's really helpful for you, Angela, but that's what came to mind when you asked the question. So gang, it's all on you. Workflow before technology. Make sure you start something, make sure you document it, make sure you hold people accountable. And as you go through these, again, take all your notes, do a recording. And if you find yourself where you can't, and the other party can't be impartial, get somebody else to do it and get it done for you and get some opportunities for some real change, or at least documentation of what's possible to change. That's all I got for today, gang. I appreciate you coming. Hopefully this has been helpful. Again, register for Thursday's session for the SDK piece. And then next week is the SDK retirement party conversation. So we'll talk about that as well. You guys have an awesome rest of your day. Thanks for coming. We'll catch you next time. See ya.